Hi, Scott Orlin with CINEMA-Magazin. Okay, all German fans, one of our locals has done well. He is kind of one of the top animators at Pixar. Markus Kranzler, thank you, congratulations so much for being here. I Googled you and I thought, wow, how many of us have been a professional race car driver that has been in a movie? Talk a little bit about how you got into being cars.
All right. Well, yeah, I started at Pixar and I worked on a couple of movies, and eventually I got to work on Cars 3. And I actually didn't even know that they created a character with my name. But eventually, sort of our consumer products department told me like, hey, we have like a couple of cars that are going to become diecast, and we carsified some names of our employees, and yours is one of them. So, hey, are you okay with that? And then we would release it, and you could buy it and put it on your desk. And yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
It's a pretty cool thing to have in life. So congratulations on that. But now let's switch to a different Pixar movie, and that is the upcoming Soul. I've seen it. Boy, it's another elevation in the level of what Pixar goes to. Talk a little bit about what you specifically did on the movie.
So I helped, first of all, to develop the look of the Soul characters. So in that process, basically the art department and like a small team from different other departments, we kind of like, yeah, played a little bit with various ideas of how could a human soul look like, because I didn't really know. And I mean, there's still like a lot of questions. But yeah, so the art department gave us some ideas, and then we played with that, gave it back to them, then they played with that more, and we went back and forth a couple of times. And then I also shaded one of the main characters, the soul of Joe.
When you say shading, can you define exactly what that is?
Shading is pretty much the material properties of the individual characters. And in terms of soul, their whole body is made out of this matter, energy, light, and the light kind of interacts with their body, and sort of like all what we see in terms of like color and reflections and all that kind of stuff. That's basically what shading does.
In a live action feature film, the odds are they'll shoot the movie and then may go back and reshoot 20%. When you do an animated movie, in concept, you're reshooting 100% because it's going through so many variables of what you have to do. Talk a little bit about, as you've worked on this movie, the development, where the changes have been, and is that creatively challenging to you or frustrating?
It's mostly challenging. So yeah, we get to see the movie early on in a very rough form, almost like a cartoon, with actually only like 1 or 2 frames per second. So it's like very, very rough, just to get the idea across. And that will get overworked a bunch of times, like you said. And everybody is invited to give notes and say what they liked, what they didn't like. And so even before we even start creating images or creating characters, there is already a change happening that we can kind of witness. And then eventually, as the movie slowly walks through production, certain sequences and shots get approved, and we work on them, and then they basically get made in the form that you eventually see on the big screen. And it luckily rarely happens that a shot or even a whole sequence like moves through the whole process of like we have the final images and then eventually they cut it out. Luckily, like we have that workflow already going, so we know kind of like way before it gets to the end stage that okay, this sequence is important, or oh yeah, they already cut that out, so we don't even need to worry about like characters that get introduced that don't appear anywhere else. So it is not a lot of things that really come from it where it's like, oh my God, all this work we did was for nothing. So we have a very good track record of avoiding unnecessary work. but work might change.
What I find fascinating about Pixar and the animated movies you do is the technology you use on film A radically develops by the time you do film B. And then when you do film C, you're going, did we do that on film A? How did we even get through that? Talk a little bit about, in the years you've been at Pixar, what have been some of the radical technological developments that hopefully have made your job easier?
We changed software. We moved to basically using a software called Katana to light our shots, and we also use it to shade. But since then we also moved now to a proprietary software to do all our shading work in, called Flow. So definitely on the technological side, there has been quite a bunch of development. So it is interesting to kind of like keep changing things up and always trying to figure out what's the latest and greatest and what are the best ways. For Soul, for instance, we used also Houdini, which is primarily used for effects so far in like a lot of big movies. But we now utilized it for our characters, which is a very new process. A lot of people had to learn something completely new. Yeah, and we also now switched from sort of like within Pixar. Early on, we had for rendering, we used a certain way of rendering called rays. Then eventually it became ray tracing. Now we're at Grizz, which is a path tracing method. So there is a lot of things that also happen kind of like under the hood that might not affect our work too much, because it's things that happen kind of in the computer, but then other things have a very heavy influence on our work, which kind of make it interesting because you switch things up. You never get kind of like, you have time to declutter and kind of throw out methods that were unnecessary and start something new. So I like it. I enjoy changes.
Having interviewed people at Pixar for years, almost since its inception, I remember some of the, when I say old timers, are probably people in their 40s now, that were traditional 2D animators, and they had to change and learn how to animate on a computer. What about your own background? I mean, where did you start? Were you traditionally, hand drawing, or have you just been part of a generation that always initiated their concepts on a computer?
Actually, my background is in mathematics. So I have a degree in mathematics, which is, as I guess everybody knows, very dry. And that aspect of it wasn't really my thing. So I discovered like you can definitely use mathematics for computer science applications. So that was sort of like my minor. But I do like artistry and I like creative processes. So I had computer animation as kind of a hobby, and it took me a while to kind of discover that you can learn to apply mathematics and computer science to actually make those movies. So when I found that out, for me it was kind of like the best of both worlds. There was this logic and clean way of doing things, but to make them pretty. And yeah, that's kind of like how I got into it. I always loved movies. So doing something in the movie industry was always a dream. So I eventually found this way that's kind of like perfect for me to really apply my knowledge and logical understanding to help make fun movies, in my opinion, at least.
If I make the analogy of Pixar being a sports team, when they're trying to get new people in, it's like they go to the draft. I mean, what are they looking for? So I was just wondering, was it your mathematical skill set that Pixar brought you in? I mean, how did you come to their attention?
I would say there was some luck involved for sure. I think that definitely my technical background helped. It helped me early on to get internships at different places. Eventually, I wrote my math thesis at a visual effects studio in Germany, which then also helped me get into a school in Germany called the Film Academy. And there I then worked already as a technical director on student shorts, and those then eventually helped me to kind of like get more international attention. My graduation film that I worked on with Jacob Fry called The Present. We won a couple of awards worldwide at festivals, and eventually some Pixar recruiters met me at FMX in Stuttgart, and kind of, things then developed from there.
Okay, my last question for you, I'm going to ask you to say it in Deutsch, so then those people do it. There are a lot of young people that could be watching this who look at your career and go, God, I want to become an animator too. I want to get into this profession. What words of advice or guidance would you afford them as to the best way to proceed?
Okay. Für mich ist auf jeden Fall wichtig, dass man immer positiv bleibt, nett ist, mit den Leuten wirklich versucht zusammenzuarbeiten, weil die Branche ist wirklich sehr klein. Das bedeutet, wenn man eventuell jemand ist, der gerne sein Wissen für sich selber behält und ungerne teilt, dass man dann auch schnell zu jemandem wird, den andere Leute dann vielleicht nicht empfehlen, wenn man sich irgendwo bewirbt. Man sollte auf jeden Fall immer machen, was man liebt, selbst wenn es vielleicht nicht Mainstream ist. Vielleicht nicht unbedingt einfach nur kopieren, was andere machen, sondern einfach das machen, wofür man selber eine Begeisterung hat. Und das spürt man dann auch wirklich im Endprodukt. Also das wären jetzt so auf die Schnelle 2 Ratschläge.
Well, Markus, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations. The movie is, I don't want to say too much because I think it just takes you emotionally on a different level of anything else that I've seen before at Pixar. And you're a car, and cars, that's still one of the coolest things ever. I was like, I want to be named after something like that. But Dankeschön, thank you so much. And this is Scott Orlin. Till next time.
Thank you.